There has never been a more crucial time to ensure your food security.
Kind of bringing these lost arts back into the home is super important.
I'm joined by Paula from Make Cheese with Paula to talk about running a small acreage and the art of making cheese from scratch. Then the fiery Lana Salant from the ethical omnivore food movement. We also hear from the crew at the Solar Superstore to talk about their innovative products. The rock star herself, Kate Rundle, joins us for her epic social segment. This episode of Wild Talk.
Wild Talk is brought to you by Aventura, Timber Stove, Hornady, and Wild TV Plus.
We are back with more Wild Talk. I'm your host, Steve Hamilton.
We are back at it for another social segment on Wild Talk.
Welcome back to Wild Talk. I'm your host, Steve Hamilton. And this episode is a little bit of a turn from what we normally do, but it's still on brand with Wild Talk, Wild TV. And this one's going to be about sourcing your own food. It's so topical right now, living off the land, knowing where your food comes from, and food security. So I'm going to introduce Paula from Making Cheese with Paula. Thanks for joining me today.
Hey, how are you doing, Steve?
This is going to be a fun talk. Cheese is just about everybody's favorite. And if it's not,
It is.
if it's not your favorite, you're wrong. And don't send any hate email, but there's quite a process to it that I'd like to dive into in just a little bit. But for now, let's learn a little bit about Paula. Who are you? Where you come from?
Right. Well, thanks so much. Yeah, my name is Paula Madison. I originally grew up in the state of Wisconsin. I am a cheddarhead through and through. I did not grow up on a dairy farm. However, in the state, traveled through the state, actually went to many, many cheese factories, enjoyed a whole lot of cheese. And in fact, every time I go back, my 98-year-old father actually stops by the local cheese shop and gets me the freshest cheese curds that I can possibly chew on. So yeah, it's definitely something that I've grown up with. I went to university, decided four walls and a window was not going to be my thing. So I went off into the big wide world and I ended up working on privately owned mega yachts. And yeah, I know. Grew up in the hospitality industry, so just applied that to big white motor yachts and traveled the world, which is where I met my husband, also named Steve. And he is a Canadian. So we decided to move to a little Gulf island here in the Salish Sea, which is where I'm talking to you from right now, Gabriola Island. So we set roots down here and bought a bit of an acreage. We have an 80-acre parcel here on Gabriola. And it was here where I learned how to grow your food. Things taste so much better when you grow it yourself. So we were definitely farm to fork all those years ago. We tapped our maple trees. We have bees on our property. We grew food. We grew animals. So when I had the opportunity to milk a friend's cow named Helga, that's not my friend, that's the cow.
Thanks for clarifying.
Yeah. My friend Marlana had purchased this cow when she was very, very young, the cow that is. And little Miss Helga ended up getting in the neighboring beef cattle. And unfortunately, she bred with the big guy. So when it came time to actually calve, the calf didn't make it. So Marlana and I rolled up our sleeves, learned how to milk a cow, and then had all this amazing, gorgeous raw milk to work with. When I made my first brie, I was running around my front yard, kind of like Tom Hanks in Castaway when he made fire. I made brie, right? Hello. Exactly. What was wild is you can do this. You can do this in your own home. You don't need a whole lot of complicated equipment. And so really classes started because I was sharing these cheeses with all of my friends. So started teaching this crazy art of crafting your own cheeses all throughout BC and even into Alberta, which is fantastic. So many, many people are learning how to do it. And the great thing is that you don't need to have a Helga in your backyard. You can do it even using store-bought pasteurized milk as well.
There's a whole lot to unpack there. So let's dig back into your roots in Wisconsin, so that's out.
Yeah,
They call that Midwest, wouldn't they? Like,
the Midwest.
right?
Yes. Yep.
So you
Yep.
moved there all the way to the West Coast where you're sitting now.
So certainly, here in BC, we have a sailboat as well. We, my husband hunts. We hunt deer on the property. We fish. We prawn. We crab. Growing our food, having access to good food is fantastic. Knowing what's in your food, even more important. Even applying that into the world of cheese, yeah, it was really amazing. Even taking a look at what is in sort of some of our cheeses these days. So again, kind of bringing these lost arts back into the home is super important for me as well as my family. We've got two adult boys now, and they certainly know how to process food. Certainly get the aspects of farm to fork now as well, right? The ability to be able to do all of that.
So let's open up the layers of the 80-acre property. You call it Mad.
Sure.
You call it Mad Acres.
Yeah.
How did that name come up?
Yeah, that's a little bit of a ploy on our last name, which is Madison, but it's also a ploy on you really never know what you're going to find there. So early on, we were raising animals, pigs, turkeys, chickens. Little Winston the pig wasn't feeling so great, so he lived in the house with our, Heeler Collie Cross Gus and our cat Bagoose at the time. That kind of freaked people out when they would come to visit. We just sort of jokingly say it's a little bit mad around our place.
So what exactly do you farm on in these Mad Acres other than cheese and your ducks and all that type of stuff? I know you mentioned hunting on there, but open that up a little bit.
Yeah, so even last season, my eldest son, Reese, ended up getting his first deer on the property, after he went through and got his pal and all the rest of it. So that was really exciting. We've sort of slowed it down a little bit because I'm on the road so much. We're not doing as much farming as possible. We certainly grow our fruit, our vegetables, got some chickens at the moment. Just got delivered a huge bucket of honey from a friend who has a bee yard on our farm, which is absolutely fantastic. But in the past, we were raising pigs, turkeys, chickens, meat birds, that kind of a thing.
So what kind of barriers did you have when you were essentially transitioning to the farming life and trying to live the true field to fork, field to table lifestyle?
Certainly the whole there's not enough time in a day to be able to do all that. I guess more so with processing of our animals. We had sort of local abattoirs that had been running for years and years and years. And then for shifts in policy, they were shut down.
Right.
So you were sort of rooted to bigger processors, which got to be a little crazy, less beneficial, I guess, for the animal, longer terms of transport, that kind of a thing. We ended up sort of selling to people as well outright, so sort of run into the liability aspects of all of that. Certainly, when you're doing it just for yourself, it's a completely different ball of wax, right? And I think that's what we prefer. It's not going bigger, and not necessarily making money off of doing the farming and the animals and things like that. But I guess for us, we just sort of came back around full circle to it was important for us and our family to know how our food was raised, as well as, even how they were processed at the end of the day, right?
Well, I know a friend of mine doesn't live too far from here. He's recently moved up from the lower mainland to Prince George and bought some acreage. So now they've got chickens, and now they've got goats, and now they've got some sheep, and they're starting to live that connection from knowing where their food comes from 100% of the time. And it's doable for the average person if they got a couple hours a week and they're not trying to make money off it, but essentially they're trying to feed their family. Is that your experience?
Absolutely. Such a difference between getting a store-bought egg, who knows how long it's been there? 4 months, versus going out and having a chicken in your backyard and getting an egg. The color is golden. The taste is so much different. It doesn't take a whole lot of time. It doesn't take a whole lot of space. And even growing a garden, I think it was Winston Churchill way back long ago where he did the window box gardens, right? And it's amazing what you can do even with that. The difference between growing your own garlic versus something that you're going to get from China, for instance, right? So yeah, little steps. It doesn't have to be big and grandiose. And funnily enough, tell that friend of yours that's continually getting more and more animals that it does stink up on you that way.
Yeah.
We started really small, and then before you knew it, it was like, holy cow, this is
Yeah.
a complete like different thing, right? So yeah, it's fantastic. It's so fulfilling. Funnily enough, my father grew up on a farm back in Wisconsin, and he worked his entire life to not farm.
Mm-hmm.
And he became a very successful construction worker. Still has a hotel back there, very successful. When he came out, when we were in our full operations with farming, he just started shaking his head and laughing at me, going, "Did you not see Grandma Mamie go through all this? What are you doing?" But that night we sat down to a pork roast that had crackling on it,
Oh.
beans from the garden, potatoes from the garden. He can't even get a pork roast back in Wisconsin that actually has the skin and the crackling on it.
Oh.
And it's like, Dad, this is why I'm doing it.
Yeah.
I learned when I was very young that you grew your food. It tastes so much better when you know where it's come from, how it's been handled, and the life that it's had, right?
That's right. So
Yeah.
we talked about Matt Akers, your background, the mega yachts, but at the beginning we talked about cheese. So let's
Right.
dig into the cheese process, and I think a lot of our viewers are here for that part. So walk me, as somebody who only knows cheese, to essentially buy it in a store and then eat it and then say I need more. Walk me as a complete newbie to cheese making through the basic steps and what's involved in making your cheese.
Absolutely. Well, there's a lot right there. Where to begin? Well, okay, so here in Canada, we can't use raw milk to
Right.
produce our cheeses. We have to use pasteurized milk. Raw cheeses need to be aged for over 60 days, if they are. Even with that pasteurization process, the milk is slightly altered, if you like.
Right.
But certainly you can make absolutely amazing cheeses using pasteurized cheese right from your grocery store. So I guess first and foremost, let's start there. You don't need to have a cow in your backyard or a goat on your roof. I will support you though if you do want one.
I know
Just,
that reference too.
I'll make an argument. I'll make an argument for that. I guess what I found years ago, I was having some troubles with inflammation in my body.
Right.
And funnily enough, the girl from Wisconsin, cheese was one of the first things that triggered it, right? When I started milking this cow named Helga, making cheese, eating these unpasteurized cheeses, I had no issues whatsoever. So I started digging into sort of why that was. And even the cheeses that we have in our grocery store, if you've ever looked at labels on cheese, there's a whole lot of stuff in there that shouldn't be in there. This whole thing called modified milk ingredients.
Okay.
One of your first ingredients, right? Emulsifiers, stabilizers, things like that. So what I like to do is empower people to actually take a pretty huge, part of their diets, dairy, back by producing your own cheeses, even using store-bought, pasteurized milk. You can make all these different kinds of cheeses. Most of the ones don't require a whole lot of complicated equipment or a bunch of time. So things like your sour creams, cream cheeses, even mozzarella that you can make in 30 minutes. I mean, that's a mind blower for me.
Mm-hmm.
So as far as processes go, we rely on bacterias these days to replace the bacteria that's taken out in the pasteurization process. And you can actually make cultured cheeses that you can age for longer periods of time. So things like your cheddars, your Goudas, Havardis, things like that. But you can also make cheeses that are even, overnight kind of wonders. Cheese making usually has a process. You're heating milk up around 90 degrees. You would add a culture if you're making a cultured cheese. There's some science and chemistry behind what's happening.
Right.
But then you would add rennet to it.
Okay.
So rennet would be to the cheese making world what pectin is in your jam making world.
Okay.
It's the coagulant,
Right.
right? And then you would separate curd and whey and age the cheese, very basically. You can make cheese with 3 easy steps as well. Heating up milk, adding something that would be an acidifier, and then draining the curd. And so those kind of happen on an everyday basis as well around the world, even today. So things like paneer, ricotta, queso fresco, right? So yeah, just depending on the cheese that you make or would like to make, differing types of processes as far as that goes.
So start with the mozzarella. What?
Yeah.
What if I was to say I want to make a batch of mozzarella, what
Mhm.
is the equipment I would need, and what are the basic steps I would need to do and ingredients?
Excellent. So, mozzarella, again, rapidly acidified, 30 minutes start to finish. You're going to start with the 4 liters of milk. You're going to bring that up to 90 degrees Fahrenheit. In doing so, you add citric acid, which is the
Right.
acidifier,
Okay.
right? It's going to change the pH. At 90 degrees, what you're going to do is actually then add rennet, and that coagulates it.
Gotcha.
You cut the curd and then start to heat that up around 110 degrees. Drain the curd, and then I always save the whey. And then I'll take that curd that's now made into sort of a ball, warm it up in the whey, and it's going to a hot temperature. So mozzarella is known as a pasta filata curd, roughly translates to spun curd. It's the only cheese that does this, where the pH is such that if you have intense heat, the proteins and the proteases in that cheese, when you go to stretch it, actually start to elongate and stretch. So what you're doing is taking this cheese or this ball of, uncooked mozzarella, heating it up quite warmly, and then starting to stretch it. It's almost kind of like pulling taffy in a way, right?
Hmm.
And so you stretch it till it's nice and smooth and shiny. And this process usually only takes about a half an hour.
That's it.
You got your mozzarella.
That's it. So, is this basically done with basic kitchen materials?
Yep. Yep, absolutely. So things that are in your own home kitchen, I usually use a digital thermometer and something that's a big broad-based kind of spoon to sort of, scoop it up and things like that. But not a whole lot complicated equipment needed for that one.
Interesting.
Yeah. Yeah.
I'm going to have to talk to you off the air and get some more information on that, because I literally used mozzarella last night. It's one of our favorites
Oh,
here.
yeah.
We're always buying the
Yeah.
big blocks, but there's nothing better when you go to the deli
Yeah.
and you find the fresh stuff that's still in the water. It's just the
Absolutely.
ball. It's just top notch. So, how important are local ingredients for ensuring a top quality cheese?
So with pasteurization, we rely on the big companies. Agripor Saputo purchased a couple of local cooperatives on the island, Dairyland and Island Farms. So I tend to promote smaller dairies. A lot of different reasons. The smaller dairies are usually pasteurizing at lower temperatures. So the actual casein protein, that's what we like as cheesemakers, it's kept more intact. The higher the temperature you go in pasteurization, the more that casein protein is actually altered or denatured. The other thing I like about smaller dairies is, smaller herd systems, better husbandry. You got to support the little guys, Steve. What they're doing to bring those trade to the table, it's phenomenal. And we all know the power of big companies and the power of lobbyists in the government. So I usually very much try to promote local producers.
What's your favorite cheese to make and why?
Oh boy, that's a hard one.
Good. Good.
It depends on the season. It depends on the reason. It also depends on which wine I'm drinking. No, I'm kidding. One that I always have on hand would be a French cheese called fromage blanc. Anyone who knows me and has been to my house knows of my little dip that I do with sun-dried tomatoes and pesto.
Oh,
But you can also, throw some butter, garlic, and herbs into it and make your own homemade boursin.
I love Boursin.
So, yeah. So that's one that I like to say it's like cream cheese, only if it's a word ubified, because it's just so much better.
Okay. What advice would you give to somebody who's looking to, one, live off the land, and two, make their own cheese?
So, there's a bunch of information out there. I would tend to probably go with, websites as far as kits and supplies and things like that. Certainly, if anybody has any questions, they can definitely, get in contact with me and I can steer them in the right direction. Cheese making classes, they're becoming more and more popular, the whole do-it-yourself thing. So check around, either through adult education or even recreation societies, that kind of a thing. And try it, start small. Don't dive into making a Stilton right away. Baby steps, start small and work your way up. But yeah, it's so much easier than you'd ever imagine. And like I said, bringing it back into the home kitchen, we lost it all those years to big industry, right?
I'm sure it did.
The other thing that I absolutely love about cheese making It connects you absolutely to the land. It connects you to animals. It connects you to your food. But you know what? It can also build community. So I jokingly say we're going into, winter is coming. We're going into long, dark winters. What a great thing for you even up there to do. Friday night pizza night. You make the mozzarella, you throw it on the pizza, you invite your friends over, you gather, you connect, right? It's a great thing to connect over food.
Sure is. Awesome. Thanks, Paula, for joining me today. This has been an incredible conversation. I've learned a ton. Now I'm hungry. So I'll have to keep in touch with you and let you know how I do.
Excellent. No worries. Hey, thank you so much for reaching out. I really, really appreciate it.
Hello, everybody. Kate Rundle here, back at it with more Kate's Wild Finds. Since today's episode touches on sustainable living, I'm coming at you from the chicken coop with my main man, Terry Crews. But enough about us. Let's go check out some deadly videos in 3, 2, 1. Let's go.
There you go. I'll be a What the
Oh my.
I quit. What the fuck?
Never back down, never what?
Never give up.
Never back down, never what?
Never give up.
Let's go! Let's go!
Alrighty, everybody. Terry and I hope you enjoyed those deadly clips, but we're out of here. Stay tuned for more Wild Talk.
Always questions about the innovations in solar power. So I've got one of the market leaders in this. I got Dale Rowe from the Solar Superstore joining me today. Dale, thanks.
Hey, no problem. Appreciate being on here.
So, Solar Superstore, that's quite the name. It kind of gives us a direction of what this company is all about. So, for somebody sitting on the outside, give us a brief overview what the Solar Superstore is.
Solar Superstore is a Edmonton-based supply company. We do ship across Canada. We do solar equipment from off-grid people, RV people, home installations, a lot of do-it-yourself people. So we do a lot in the way of people walking in, asking questions about solar. We're a customer-focused based company, basically, who will explain a lot of the details that need to be done when it comes to solar installations, from the beginning to the end. So,
Okay.
yes, and then that is also including batteries. We carry lithium batteries, lead acid batteries, cold weather batteries for our cold weather climates up in Edmonton.
What inspired the start of the Solar Superstore?
So Solar Superstore kind of started as a pet project back in 2011. Actually, it was something I've been thinking about for 10 years prior to that. I was working for the man at one time for another company, and they got bought out. So I decided to quit and start my own business, and that's kind of how it started, believe it or not. And so, when I first started, I was kind of doing an installation business to begin with. I had found out really quickly and early that there really wasn't much supply out there in the Alberta world here. So I decided at that point, it's like, okay, I got to bring in all my own equipment. So when I started bringing in my own equipment, it's okay, now I need a warehouse, and now I need a spot. And then it morphed into, instead of being a solar installation company, which gave me all the knowledge that I needed to, be able to have a solar supply store here. So
That's so it's been an evolution. It was something that was kind of in your blood, so to speak, going back a heck of a long time, and you took the leap. You jumped into
yeah,
something that was it's still relatively new, and it can be scary for a lot of people. Walk me through a little bit of about what it is. If I wanted to get a setup for, say, a recreational property, what's involved in that?
yeah. So to begin with, we kind of need an inventory of your equipment that you have in your home. And so that would give us a list of like how much power you might use in your home, which is the basis for how big of an inverter we need to put in. Now, an inverter is something that takes DC power from your batteries, plus a and converts it to AC power like your home appliances are. So that's how we have to size it according to your demands. And then how long are you in there? Are you a weekend warrior or are you a full-time living? And if you're full-time living, then that's a different scenario where you have to have a lot more solar for everyday needs. But if you're a weekend warrior, where you're just out there camping on the weekends at your RV or your cabin or home, then you can have less solar panels in because you got all week to recharge the batteries back up.
Does this only work under the sun, or how does it work with cloud cover or anything like that?
When it comes to being off grid, the scenario is that you need 4 times more solar on your home than you do if you were grid connected and having solar.
Right.
Because we have to size the system according to our wintertime conditions, which is our worst case scenario.
Right. Okay.
And in the wintertime, we only get like 3 to 4 hours of daylight that is good quality to absorb energy from.
Okay.
And we have to make that last from 4 hours to the next 20 hours.
Okay.
Usually we try to make it so that you have a 3-day backup of battery storage.
Right.
Because we can usually go 3 days without sun, and then we can have it fully recharged in 1 day of sun. Yeah. And then we also have to have usually a backup generator at the same time because we can go a week without sun.
Right. Right. What would you recommend? Like, walk me through some of the range of products you offer. If I said I want to get away from fossil fuels, or I want to reduce my carbon footprint, or whatever language you want to use, what would that look like to somebody who's a complete newbie to this world?
So somebody who wants to have a complete off-grid on, say, living the normal lifestyle that you're used to at home and stuff like that, you would have to probably install that size of a solar panel is about 22 square feet worth of surface area.
Okay.
It's about 4 foot by 6 foot. And you'd probably need anywhere from 25, maybe up to 40 of those to be completely off-grid.
Right.
And then we have in the back what they call a big home inverter. Like it's probably 2 feet wide by 3 feet tall and weighs 100 pounds. And that'll give you like 10,000 watts of output power to your home. Okay, so that means you can run your toaster, your dishwasher, your coffee maker, still have all your TV lights on and a sump pump going.
That's insane. So talk about the feedback you're getting from some of these customers that are jumping in with both feet going, never done it, but this is the way I want to live. What are they saying to you?
Once you go solar, they absolutely love them. They'll just like, I wish I did this sooner, and I wish I didn't have that generator running for the last 20 years and stuff like that they were using for living off grid in their cabins. And no, honestly, once people get into the world of solar, there's no looking back.
As we start to wrap this up, what are the future goals for the Solar Superstore? Where do you see it going?
Right now, we're hopefully in the process of expanding. We do want to get out to, like, say, Fort McMurray, Grand Prairie, get up into the Northwest Territories, Red Deer, Calgary. We're looking for little possible branch stores, if you want to call it that, so that we can start expanding and stuff. So, yeah, I mean, there's the world of online that we're also competing with, and yeah, I think people still do like the touchy-feely when they can come in here and see it and feel it versus, asking questions and not just getting what they get and then hope that it works, right?
Awesome. So somebody wants to get in touch with you. Where do they find you online? Do you have a website?
Yeah, our website is solarsuperstore.ca.
Perfect. And what about in person?
Yeah, in person, we're at 6316 Roper Road in Edmonton, Alberta.
So a huge thanks from all of us at Wild TV and Wild Talk for joining me today.
We love solar and everything about it, and I'm sure you will too.
All right, welcome back to Wild Talk. I'm your host, Steve Hamilton, and today we're going to be diving into one of the most common and crucial conversations that seem to come up. So as more people become conscious of their food choices, the questions surrounding food security and the origins of our meals are more important than ever. So today I'm happy to be diving into this a little bit with Lana from the Ethical Omnivore Movement to explore this. So Lana, thanks for joining me today.
Thanks for having me, Steve.
This has been a conversation you and I have tried to get going for the last month or so.
Yes.
Things come up, people get busy. So I appreciate you giving me a little bit of time today. So let's dig right into it. So who are you and where are you coming to us from?
Well, I'm Lana Salant. I'm currently living in the Crow's Nest Pass, Alberta, Canada. Back in my hometown after about a 40-year absence from it. Got a different job. That's part of why I was having some struggles connecting with you. I had a lot on my plate there for a few weeks. So anyway, here we are. So again, Lana Salant, born and bred in Alberta, Canada. And I started ethical omnivore movement while I was living in Vancouver, BC in 2012. At that point, I'd been an ethical omnivore for a long while already, not calling it that necessarily, but just somebody who uh, started in the fitness industry, yoga, went vegan because of it, health failed because of it. And then in 2012, a vegan movement was really ramping up. And I thought there needed to be a voice for ethical meat eating because it's definitely possible. And it's far more possible than veganism if you want to and care about sustainable agriculture, eating locally and eating seasonally, which is all part of what I kind of preach about as an ethical omnivore. So I started this little Facebook page just to discuss it, and it took off pretty quick. And we have about 40, it's not big because it's still niche, right? It shouldn't be, but it is. So I have about 40,000 followers across a few different platforms. And the first thing that happened, which I kind of thought would happen, but not the way it did, is we got attacked really ferociously by the vegan movement. And also jumped on in there for the attacks was the conventional agriculture guys as well. So at the very beginning, it was all just, I was by myself. And I was, fighting all these fronts. And slowly but surely, the regenerative ag guys I reached out to everybody I could, and they started helping out. And now we're doing quite well with the message. You know, the carnivore movement kind of started ramping up. Keto, paleo was first. You don't hear a lot of paleo anymore. You
No.
hear, but again, we're living in kind of an extreme society. We're either one way fully or we're the other way fully. So the carnivores, God bless them all, but they're the new vegans a little bit. They're pushing this kind of extreme diet, and I'm trying to just do what I've always done, just balance it right down the middle, talk about we support our regenerative crop producers just as much as we do our regenerative meat producers, but the meat producers are the ones that need the help. So we tend to talk a lot more about ethical meat, the health benefits of eating animal product.
Yeah, that's a great background. And I'm from Vancouver myself. I
Oh,
moved to
okay.
Prince George about 17, 18 years ago. So
Right.
I can only imagine the pushback in
Oh,
in the urban environment. Up here, it's commonplace for people to hunt and go out and source their own food.
right.
But I know if I was to bring home a moose into Vancouver, I would realistically probably have conservation at my door, police at my door, and I'd end up as
Yeah.
a front page media guy. So
Yeah,
I can only
exactly.
imagine the walls that you had brought up there. What was the part where you said, you know what? I need to do this. Like, what was the catalyst that said that kind of sparked the ethical omnivore movement?
Well, it really was my experience as a vegan. Now, this is back before the internet, even. So I was vegan in kind of the early 90s. And just because of my taught yoga, I've taught yoga for about 35 years. And it was something we all did, right? We're all kind of I was a light meat eater at the time just because of it, and then a group of us decided to go full on vegan because it was, again, it was starting and people were talking about it. And I went on an advanced yoga retreat, and my yoga mentor at the time was vegan. It wasn't called vegan though. It was just absolutely no animal products, and I got a bit of pressure into it, and I
Mm-hmm.
tried it, and I'll tell you, I've tried it twice over the years, and I can't last 10 months before things start going really wrong with my body, especially as probably more fit then than I am now. But as somebody who was kind of almost an elite athlete, I lost strength, I lost hair, I lost complexion, I lost my sanity a little bit too. And so that's kind of that was the big catalyst for me, was the health, because I've always spoken on health. I've always, my whole life, tried to keep up with the research, right? I would probably have been called a greenie if for today's standards, right? So yeah, so that was it. It was about health. And then when I started reaching out to all these sustainable meat farms, if you want to call it that, um, then the regenerative agriculture started ramping up. And so I got almost more into regenerative agriculture than I did even health. And to this
Right.
day, I'll talk about the benefits of eating animal products, but I'm so into these regenerative guys, man. I'm just in love with them, what they do, and they're against all odds, and being niche and trying to make money in this niche industry that should be conventional. It should be the standard, right? Especially when we're talking about all the climate stuff and what have you. I try to stay away from too
Right.
much climate. We're extreme there too, right? You have people
Mhm.
that are they want to support sustainable agriculture, but because of people like Greta Thunberg, now we've got the climate uh alarmists. So we've got the alarmists. So the answer to alarmists is denial now. No climate's
Mhm.
happening. So it's such an acrobatics act, trying to push this wonderful message.
Right. And you do it well. I've followed you on Facebook for years. But what triggered there in your comments there was that you said you were vegan at one point. So to go from one extreme to not necessarily to the other, but from going no animal products to supporting and essentially promoting sustainable agriculture and meat, that's that's quite the polar change. So and having conversations with people like yourself, no matter what section they're on, whether or not they're vegan or carnivore, keto, paleo, et cetera, that are open and change perspectives based on research and information. There's too much emotion that runs things in this world, and facts are facts, right? Meat is good for you, and especially when it's done sustainably, and that's what it's all
Right.
about.
See, I wasn't like a true vegan. If you talk to vegans, I just didn't
Yeah,
eat animal products for a while. I didn't push it, uh, uh, you know, the way they do now. Well, there was no internet, so who are
right.
you
I
going to
suppose,
yell
yeah.
at, right? It was just something you tried for health. It wasn't even so much about animal rights for me. I've never been into animal rights. They don't have rights, for crying out loud. They don't care about rights. They don't know what rights are. They have the rights we give them, and we should give them the best possible life
Hmm.
and the best, most reverent death.
Agreed.
That's the rights that the animals deserve. They are here for our nutrition. If they weren't, meat products wouldn't have every single essential nutrient.
So how can individuals that are interested in the becoming an ethical omnivore start making ethical choices, I guess, in their diets?
The first thing you need to do is find your local regenerative people. And you got to latch on to them, help them, make them succeed. They've got so much going against them. And it's not hard to find. Cut back on some other stuff, cut back on your gadgets, cut back on your junk food, cut back on your booze and your vaping, and start supporting what's truly going to make a difference on the planet. And that's your regenerative farmers and ranchers. Get your little basket of food delivered to you once a month, once a year. That's the best thing you can do, is bulk ordering. Get a few friends
Mhm.
and get a cow and divide it up. It's going to be cheaper, and it's only around $12 a pound. That might sound a lot if you're buying the garbage meat from Safeway, but even that's not cheap. Ever bought a ribeye at Safeway? That's just from the big guys. It's expensive.
Oh yeah.
If you're going to stay away from any animals conventionally, please don't buy pigs. They have a rough life. They have a rough life. Don't support pork, conventional pork. Please don't.
I love seeing on social media now. There's almost, I don't want to say it's a movement, because I imagine a lot of these ranchers have been around for decades, but a lot of them are starting to post on social media now saying, we are taking orders for this spring, this fall, whatever, for purchasing sides of beef cut to your specifications.
And also, I'll say this, start hunting, people. Start hunting, make friends with a hunter, because wild game
Yeah.
is it. Wild game is better than anything you'll have. And I grew up in the Crow's Nest Pass. I'm in the Rocky Mountains. I know tons of farmers. Well, I did. I'm back home now again. But those are ethical people. They want the environment good because they want to keep hunting.
I love hearing that. As a hunter myself, and a lot of our viewers and listeners are hunters, they're going to be praising you, and they're going to be looking for you on social media immediately hearing that.
There's so many ways to do this properly. You just have to stop being lazy. And that's what it is mostly. It's not even the money a lot of times. It's just easier to, we have busy lives.
I know I've been guilty of it in the past. I was just looking for the convenience, but sometimes you just, if you're willing to drive 8, 9, 10 hours in pursuit of a deer or a moose or a caribou, whatever you're hunting, you're spending that gas money anyway. So if you don't come back with something, support a local rancher, right? It's
absolutely
that money is being burnt anyway. And I know my wife would go, you know what? You spent this much on fuel and you came back with nothing. Why didn't you spend half on a quarter of a cow or
yeah, have it there as a safety net, if nothing else, right?
That's the way I look at it, right? But I had already planned on it, honey. It's funny. So anyways, we start to wrap this up, Lana. I want to know, what do you see for the future of the ethical omnivore movement?
What I want is more connection. I'm almost sick of social media. A few years ago, I had planned to buy an RV, which I just did actually this summer, and just get on the road and start meeting everybody. But again, I need some more support too. Like I've got, I want the fighting to stop amongst everybody. Start finding things we have in common.
That's right.
Start loving each other a little bit more. We're all on the same side. Stop the extremism, please. And if you are a carnivore or a vegan or what have you, just try to meet the rest of us in the middle, right? Nobody's dying from lettuce. So stop that nonsense too. But again, our crop support, our regenerative crop guys, they also need support. They do, So if you're an omnivore, eating a truly omnivore diet, or you are a vegetarian, because we've got a lot of vegetarians in our group, kudos to them too. They're eating the free range eggs and the grass fed dairy, and we love them, and they're ethical omnivores just as much as anybody else is. So I want everybody to come together, everybody to meet in the middle, and start local hubs where we can meet face to face and start supporting each other that way as ethical omnivores on that journey.
I think that's a perfect way to end it. Finding a common ground is what we need to do.
Yeah.
As hunters and meat eaters and pescatarians, vegans, vegetarians, no matter where you are, we all want the same thing, and that's a better planet, sustainable wildlife, better habitat. We just need to find how we can work together to bridge that gap. So Lana,
absolutely.
A huge thanks from me, from Wild Talk and from Wild TV, for giving us a little bit of your time today.
Yeah, it's been my absolute pleasure and honor. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Lana.
You bet.